Ready? So on behalf of Whitney director Adam Weinberg, who's in Chicago, and our chief curator Scott Rothkopf, who's away on business, it's really my pleasure to be able to welcome you to the press preview of Agnes Pelton, Desert Transcendentalist. The show was organized by the Phoenix Museum and curated by its Selig family curator, Gilbert Vicario, who you'll hear from shortly. The exhibition at the Whitney was made possible by the Judy Hart Angelo and the American Fellows Legacy Fund, with generous support from Linda and Stuart Resnick. We're grateful to them and to Judy and Don O'Pantry, Sarah Pearsall, Georgia and Michael de Havilland, and Michael Lippert. The Whitney, everyone on the Whitney staff has contributed to this show, as is usually the case, but there are a few people I'd like to single out for special validation. One of them is Sarah Humphreyville, senior curatorial assistant, who's been my partner on all aspects of the show, and Anna Martin, who did this beautiful installation that you've had a chance to see already. The Whitneys had a long history with Agnes Pelton. We acquired Amma in Egypt in 1995 and Sea Change in 1999. And both paintings have been on almost continuous view the entire time we've been at this building, which we opened in 2015. And walking by the paintings on the way to my office every day, I was always struck by how captivated viewers were by the kind of luminosity and spiritual expression in Pelton's paintings. Viewers not even realizing what it was that enraptured them, but people standing in front of the paintings for extended periods of time. They truly are among our most beloved works in the collection. So Pelton sought to transcend the oppression and discord of modern life through union with what she called the divine principle. And in her art, she portrayed that union in these luminous canvases that you see around us, in which she encapsulated her experience of the higher plane of consciousness, what she called perfect consciousness, by combining ethereal forms that you see around you with very luminous veils of color, glazes of color, and spiritually charged symbols. She created transcendent emblems of spiritual enlightenment. Her work was little known and little recognized during her lifetime. She had several shows in Southern California, several gallery shows in New York, but she really existed in a vacuum, not celebrated or embraced by the art world. Perhaps a little bit because of living outside of that art world, first in Long Island and then in Cathedral City, California. But today, at a time when the world seems very unsettled and people are looking for meaning beyond physical things, her portraits of spiritual enlightenment that she experienced in dreams and meditation seems all the more timely. So now I'd like to introduce Gilbert Vicario, the curator of the Phoenix Art Museum and the curator of Agnes Pelton.
Barbara, thank you so much. I want to thank everyone here at the Whitney Museum of American Art, Adam Weinberg, Scott Rothkopf, Barbara Haskell, and Sarah Humphreyville. It's an extraordinary installation. I'm thrilled to see the works here. They actually look kind of different, actually, and I'm noticing a few nuances that I hadn't before. Working with Barbara was a little bit like a master class in curating. And we had a wonderful meeting about it. God, was it 2 years ago already? Where we kind of pared down the checklist, and every suggestion that Barbara made was just spot on. So I always make sure to mention that every time Pelton opens. I discovered Pelton 4 years ago. I was previously at the Des Moines Art Center, and one of the first things that I did in Phoenix was go through the collection. I went through the American art galleries, and that's when I discovered Pelton. Messengers and Day were sitting alongside Florine Stettheimer, Marsden Hartley, George O'Keeffe, and that kind of led me down the rabbit hole to discover who she was. As it turns out, one of the paintings was in Des Moines. For this, the entire time I was there, it had never been hung, which I kicked myself. But that kind of led me down a really interesting path of discovery. Pelton was included in Maurice Tuchman's landmark exhibition, Spirituality and Abstract Art. I think it was 1985, perhaps, 1986. And then, of course, Michael Zakian, who organized the first Pelton exhibition in 1995 for the Palm Springs Art Museum. And so it's been almost 25 years since Pelton has resurfaced. I'm excited because I'm basically a contemporary art curator, and this is one of the really the only show that I've worked on with a dead artist. But I noticed that a lot of young painters were familiar with Pelton's work, and I thought, okay, this is very interesting that you have this young generation, many of which weren't even alive during Michael Zakian's exhibition, actually coming to us, wanting to borrow works of Pelton's to include in exhibitions. And so it was really in that spirit of a contemporary art filter through which I was compelled to work with this material. I'm extremely excited to see it here, as I mentioned earlier. And I think we're still in the learning process. There's still a lot to discover. I spent a lot of time at the Archives of American Art, poring through her journals, and her handwriting is just indecipherable. And Michael Zakian can attest to that as well, in fact. But the simplest way that I can describe it, her trajectory was first being characterized as a Southwest artist, and then a follower or a kind of an O'Keeffe artist, both of which are not really precise. Cathedral City is not really in the Southwest, it's the American West Desert. Pelton spent, I think, a total of 4 months in New Mexico, in Taos, with Mabel Dodge Lujan. I don't think Pelton ever met O'Keeffe, and her involvement with the Transcendental Painting Group, which was active from 1938 to 1941, was basically done remotely. She was an honorary president after being asked by Raymond Johnson, could you please be the honorary president of the TPG? And so one of the things that I did, actually, that was very helpful for me was think of Pelton outside of an American art context, and to think of her in a larger sort of international way, looking at her as an abstract artist. I connected her to Emma Kunz, the Swiss artist who did her geometric drawings. And I actually even went out to Kunz's, her home, which is now turned into a museum. And there were some similarities, actually. Obviously, with Hilma af Klint, which there was no accident. This exhibition didn't come on the tails of Klimt, but it's certainly, as Barbara has pointed out, something that's sort of in the moment and something that we are reveling in the discovery and in the realignment of women in modernism and the roles that they've played, which are very different from their male counterparts. So for that, I think I'll just leave it at that, and I think we can go ahead and give you a little preview. Thank you so much.
So for those of you who want to join the two of us, we're going to meet at Being, the painting in the first gallery, and we'll walk around the show with all of you.